You know what it is. I'm Parlay Hunter,
Come on, man. You know it's your boy Life of D Green here, man.
and this is a Bro Media production. Bro Bets in the house. We are on week 2 of the NFL. Dre, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good, man. It's been an exciting first 2 weeks. I still feel like we've been getting a little bit of a sample size pause of a lot of games and what people are really doing. It's been some, what's very noticeable every year. It's a lot of key injuries already. I know we're going to have a different rundown today, but we may be getting might get into that because I'm looking at the Rams offense and they were one of the teams you were saying about 0-2 and they lost both of their best receivers once again. So it's looking pretty shaky for some teams and some key injuries. Pacheco's out for another 6 weeks, CMC, Debo, and 49ers. So, but
Yeah.
let's get right to it, man. The
Well,
Dolphins, man.
you brought up injuries. Dolphins. First thing on the slate today. Let's talk about Tua, like right away. Let's just talk about Tua, the concussions, and let's get right into it because you have spent a lot of time on the playing field. You've seen your fair share of injuries, and so we can take it from a personal perspective. What do you think about Tua? What do you think about his injury history and where what do you think he should do? I mean, honestly speaking, from the bottom of your heart, what do you think?
Well, we play a sport which is a gladiator sport, and each
Yeah.
man carries his own, own sword. What I mean by that is I'm not to judge any man to, if he wants to retire, now or later because of what he has in his heart, far as the competitive edge and just being a NFL top 10 quarterback. But from my personal experience, bro, I had two major injuries, two major concussions in my career. The first one wasn't as bad, but the second one was when I was at Division II school in Arkansas, and it was our final scrimmage. And I can remember I was out for a whole month with that concussion. And concussions are no joke. I think people don't really understand the nuance of the research now and the technology. The whole Will Smith movie that came out some years back with just the impact of what it's done to guys' brains after they retire. CTE, look at AB, look at Junior Seau, just some recent cases and things like that. And it's like it's serious. It's a serious deal because you don't know while you're playing how serious it is. But we actually are seeing each one for Tua be very serious. Like every time I've seen him get a concussion, he goes into a shock. And I don't mean to be doing this to mock him, but it's a serious deal. And so for me, man, it's a real evaluation that first starts with him, with inside, then his wife, and then his
Yeah.
family, and then the football team and things like that. But I would say leaning to the side of, I think, right now, I think he takes his time to come back. They go get Skylar Thompson at backup quarterback, or they try to bring somebody else in. And if he feels enough to play in this season, get through this season, and after that, based on the career. But if he doesn't want to come back, I just hope and pray everybody can respect and see. He laid it on the line for the Dolphins.
Yeah. I think like total utmost respect. And to get a little darker here, the concussion thing is not it's not a quick uh it's not like it happens and then you you have things that you have to, let's see how I want to put this. The people who suffer from CTE die a very slow and tragic death. It's harmful to the people around them, and
Yeah,
they deteriorate. Chris Benoit, the wrestler, murdered his family. I mean, they I think believe chalked it up to CTE and stuff like that. There's Junior Seau. I mean, it's so tragic, and now you have this thing where he has to make a decision. Also, money plays a huge part because his contract is structured around getting paid. Now he probably retire if he quits football, he probably has 20 mil in the bank and he can live a completely happy, peaceful life, very, very rich. The other thing is if you keep playing, I believe it's like 100 million that you leave on the table. And he so that plays an issue of your choosing. I mean, if you're in his shoes, 120 million looks a lot more than 20 million. And, these guys start to live a life of big houses, big cars, providing for their family, generations, uh, of their family, their whole family. I mean, he's got a big family. So it's like, I think that where I'm sitting, I say retire, save your life, you got enough money and be happy. But and I can do that, sitting here and not playing and not having the option in front of me. And you can say, parlay, you don't get to choose and you don't have a right, but I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to sit here and say what I got to say. Now, if I was in Tua's shoes, would I have the same perspective? Probably not. Of course I wouldn't. I'd have the perspective of being a professional football player and living my dream and putting it out on the field and loving the game and being passionate about the game. And I mean, you start to get older and you really do start to feel like I would die for this game because I love it. It's the most exciting thing of my life. And I'm playing for millions of dollars and I'm at the peak of the performance and the level. And there's so many things that I think are pulling you towards that game and the dream, but it can literally kill you. And,
Yeah.
and it can kill you. And then also, like I said, CTE is no joke. It's a tragedy. I mean, you're suffering badly. You're in hell for those last few years of your life. So it's a huge story. And so I said what I had to say. You said what you had to say. Now let's keep talking about the Dolphins because I want to talk about Mike, the head coach, and I want to talk about his coaching. And yes, what happened with Tua happened, but let's say the concussion didn't happen. Tua still threw for multiple interceptions, and they lost, and they looked completely defeated on defense. And you look at some of the names on that roster: Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, Achane is a great player. They got Raheem Mostert. They got a lot of depth. That roster, I would say top 10, arguably top 5 in the league. Mike, is Mike on the hot seat?
No.
Because all right, well let's go there. All right, so tell me
No.
why Mike
That's
is.
a quick answer. No, because he's not on the hot seat. Because let's look at the Dolphins the last 15 years. Their relevancy is the last 5 years, really the last 3 years. He's been head coach. The emergence of Tyreek Hill. We're not just talking on the field, off the field. Ticket sales, business, money. We know how this thing works. It's a business. So from that perspective, no. And two, he's brought them close. I don't know if they won the division once out of the last 4 years. I'm not good on my fact check. We'll have to fact check that after this. But he's had them in contentions. They've been in the playoffs. They've been to the wild card. They've been to a divisional game. Like they've been there. So I don't think necessarily he's on the hot seat. What I think now is how do you see, and this is what I've been seeing on ESPN, Sports Center, and everything. How do you see as a head coach? You have to start to look at it without Tua as your quarterback. So you're not on the hot seat, but you have to kind of change your whole game plan, change your whole playbook, change your whole perspective of what my offense will look like. Now, the defensive problems have nothing to do with the offensive problems. Defensively, I think that they're missing a couple pieces here and there. I think they got an okay secondary with Jalen Ramsey, Javon Holland in the back end at safety. But, Alex Van Ginkel has moved on to the Vikings. He looks phenomenal with the Vikings, and Brian Flores, who was once the coach there for the Dolphins. And so I think that you need to kind of fine tune it. They let Christian Wilkins go, went over to the Raiders. So their interior D line's not as good as it was to me last year. Linebacker position is okay. They'll find themselves. Now in the AFC East too, where it's kind of this division of recent years has been one of the better ones. Now this is kind of a toss up to me. I think it's between the Bills and if the Jets really do show up with the roster that they got. But New England is playing good football, but they're still young and they're still figuring their self out of a new identity of a new head coach after taking over for Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo. So there's some pieces still missing with those teams. But I think Mike McDaniel's bigger question is, let's just say Tua doesn't come back. Now you're not on the hot seat, but you need to have an effective game plan for the general manager, for the owner of the team to be like, how can we still be successful? Because not let's not forget too, Tyreek Hill is only on a 2-3 year deal, and I do quote, I remember him saying once this deal is fully done with the Dolphins, he was questioning just retiring. You know, he's already got a championship with Kansas City. He's been deemed the best player on the in the whole league last year, according to the players. You know, he's accomplished so much that what else does he need to accomplish? You know, and so I think that your window of being great with the talent that you just said, Parlay, is the greater challenge rather than him being on the hot seat right now. I think they just re-signed him to a deal, knowing that he was paired up with Tua, so that has something to do with that. So he's for sure locked in with the team for another 2 years. But it's now you need to go look at the draft. Do you go get Shador Sanders next year? Do you go look at some other quarterbacks that'll be coming out? Cam Ward down there in Miami already for the Hurricanes. You could bring him in, somebody to replace Tua. The question is, if Tua doesn't come back, we got to replace. It's not replacing Mike McDaniel necessarily right now. It's replacing Tua as the leader of this team. And how does that look?
Okay. So I want to say watching that game the other day before the Tua injury, but after the second interception, in the second quarter, they showed the players on the sidelines, and they looked they looked completely uninterested, and it's starting to and that could just be the media and the camera angles doing their thing to paint a picture or perspective, but there will be an argument about the culture, and do these guys buy in and want to compete and fight for Mike, or is Mike more of their friend rather than their mentor and their coach? And I think that there's a difference there. And for a coach, you listen, and I mean it's like the army, and you got a drill sergeant, and uh, you got soldiers, and the soldiers, are they going to go to war, or do they lose the game in the second quarter and they're ready to go home and party in Miami? So there is when I saw that the defense stopped tackling and James Cook took that ball to the house in the second quarter, and everybody looked pretty defeated, and nobody was tackling, and they just kind of let him walk through there. So I I look at that as a culture problem. Guys don't want to play. Guys don't want to hit. They want to give up when they're down 20 points in the second quarter. That's an issue. And then you got teams that buy into the culture and buy into the team, and they make big comebacks, like the Falcons last night with Kirk Cousins. And that's just what I'm seeing with my eyes. So we'll see. It's only week 2. We got a lot more ball to play, and we'll see. And we will definitely probably circle back here as we see more Dolphins on prime time and big games. Let's start talking about the best 0-2 teams that we circled, and talk more about some of their problems. We got the Cincinnati Bengals, we got the Ravens, we got the Rams, and we got the Jags. So let's quickly touch on each of those teams and what we think the major issues are there, and how to turn it around, starting with Cincinnati.
I think Cincinnati is probably the best one. From all around scheme of things, from offense to defense. Cam Taylor Britt is an emerging cornerback in this league. I don't know if you've seen the play he made, the Kansas City one-hand intercepting. Yeah, that dude is a dog. I remember, scouting him a lot coming out of draft from Nebraska. So they got some pieces on defense. Cincinnati is going to fight because who they have at quarterback, who they have at receivers, and then who they have at their head coach. Zac Taylor's doing a great job of trying to manage this team with staying healthy with injuries. I would say the main issue with them is it's finding a consistent fight, in the trenches. Their offensive D line and are bad to me, and I think that's the continuous thing that has held them back from being any bit of good. And I don't root too much for Cincinnati; their division, rival of mine and the Steelers and things like that. But I do respect all the teams in my division. But the least team that I respect, who is my most rival right now, is the Baltimore Ravens. I said this early on, Parlay. I said this to you in off the mic. I told you that Derrick Henry wasn't going to be a great fit for this team, and I still will stand on that. The scheme of his run ability with the scheme of what the Ravens like to do in run is bad. Derrick Henry is a running back that has to get going, and you got to give him more carries as the game gets going, and it gets harder for Lamar to be Lamar, and it gets harder for whoever the offense coordinator is to call plays accordingly because you have this big running back who needs 17, 20 something carries a game to get going. Then you have a quarterback who's so dynamic that once you take the ball out of his hands, how does he make plays for you? On top of that, I don't think that their defense is good as it was last year. I said that too.
Okay,
and I think
so real
ahead.
quick, before we go on to the Ravens, let's just finish up on Cincinnati because I got a few things I want to say about Cincinnati. I want to say Zach Taylor doing what he did. Now he's got Jamar Chase pissed off, right? Because they're not going to re-sign him, and he's or they had the signing issues. So I'm sorry. I just feel like Jamar Chase is unhappy. Zach T, he got that DB balling, but like you said, they got issues in the trenches. So if you draft, a great corner, you got that part, fixed up, and maybe you kind of thought, well, this offense is going to be all around Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and throwing the ball. But now you got Joe Burrow with a wrist injury. T. Higgins is sitting out. Jamar Chase is unhappy. You didn't re-sign a running back. That whole offense isn't really working out. I really think that the Cincinnati Bengals could have a losing record this year. And if Joe Burrow's wrist injury doesn't get any better, he's not even throwing spirals.
But I'll say this, although that is correct, what did you just say about the Dolphins? There's that they had no fight. Cincinnati got a fight. They got a fighter's punch, I will say. Like they're in a battle every game. They honestly should have won that Kansas City game.
Right.
That's a tough call at the end, pass interference, but for them to even put themselves in that position is on them to give Mahomes that much time in that whole drive with that many seconds. We know how that goes. We've been seeing it for the last 7 years with Mahomes, but they got a fighter's punch. And I have a little bit more faith in Joe Burrow, the character, the mantra, who he is with Chase and T. Higgins. They'll figure it out. They'll put their ego aside, bro, because they understand that they're trying to win. Because one thing they do know too, one thing those three know, all three of them won't be here next year. That is much more important. They know that. They signed T. Higgins to a franchise tender, which was 1 year. Joe Burrow got his deal, and Jamar Chase is still unpaid. Yeah. So one of those two receivers will not be there next year. Okay. So I think there's a fight in this, like, can we figure it out right now? Because we got the pieces from a skill position, although they don't have the same run game that they had with Joe Mixon, they still have enough to be sustainable. We've seen it in Kansas City. You just need to have an effective run game. You don't need to, have a whole offensive playbook built for the run. You just need to have an effective run game. And they do with the backs that they have. But Their defense makes enough plays, make some turnovers, but they got to get better in the trenches. That's where I'm saying in the playoffs, the Bengals will fight to have a decent record to get into the playoffs. That's what they've done the last couple of years. But they gotta, it's early though. We're still talking on 2 weeks, not even a full 10, 18 games,
Right. Speaking on run game, going back to the Ravens, you brought up Derrick Henry, and you were making the point that the Ravens, the run game, we knew that that's what they were going to do. Also, Derrick Henry, the coach said they're not going to give him the ball 20 times a game. They didn't bring him here to give him the ball 20 times a game. He said that. So just so you can continue on your point that you were making about the Ravens and, their issues, can you continue to expand and then also take it from that point, the Derrick Henry thing? Is he just a guy there? I mean, is he not the focal point? Is he just another guy?
Parlay, whoever said that was dumb as hell, first of all. And this is going to be a project if that's the philosophy they want to live by. And he is just a guy, and I don't think this will be effective. I'm not afraid of the Ravens this year. You got Lamar playing Lamar ball, which is fun to us as fans because, hey, it's Lamar, scramble around, make plays. It'd be exciting plays, which is fun. But we're talking about winning football games here. And I'm not being biased because I'm a Steelers fan. I'm being real. How is that effective if your quarterback, who's dropped 15 pounds, he doesn't weigh the same, he start taking hits? If he's not in the game, there's nothing going to be happening on the offensive side.
Okay, so you said Harbaugh's dumb as hell because
No,
they're
I
not
said
going.
whoever said that. I think that's the offense coordinator. I don't think Harbaugh fully agrees with that. I think that's Todd Monken.
Okay, so you do think Derrick Henry should be getting the ball 25 times a game?
If you brought Derrick Henry, somebody of his caliber at his age, it's not effective to give Derrick Henry 10 to 15 carries a game because
Yeah.
what is he gonna do with that? Like he's a runner that, like I said, he's a bruiser. Although he has straight line speed and he has breakaway speed, he's still a bruiser. He's in between the tackles. He's a big running back. It's like a heavyweight fight. And you got to have that be effective late in the game. And if you're only getting him 10 to 15 carries, how do you spread that out throughout a game? If you don't get him involved early, you really don't have a run game. But if
Yeah.
you get him involved too late, you're probably down 14 something points, and now you got to throw the ball every play, and you become one dimensional. Like I said again before the season, remember what I said? What is he doing now? I haven't heard from Zay Flowers. I said when the pressure gets to cooking and he
Zay had a
becomes the
good
main
game.
dude, yeah, but is it going to be good enough to win?
Not enough guys. And, Gus Edwards is gone. J.K. Dobbins is gone. Keaton Mitchell, their scat back, is on injury reserve. Derrick Henry's like the only guy. So, and he's got
Isaiah Likely is the only dude that really is like a playmaker to me. Mark Andrews is just a shell of what he once was. I'm just sorry to say it. A lot of injuries with him has caused him to not be as effective. He's more so like a Jason Witten now. Very slow, reliable hands, but is not getting enough targets. I mean, we're into 2 weeks. So let me not, put too much pressure on him.
all
But
we
the
got.
way the offense is playing, this is why they're here at 0-2. There's no way you lose to the Raiders.
Yeah. Well, Derek got less than 20 carries both of those games. And Lamar was running the ball. And the Bengals and the Ravens, I feel like the Bengals, they have a slow start. The Ravens, they always get that week one matchup against a really tough team. They kind of have a slow start. So both of these teams, by any means, we only have 2 weeks to go off of, and we're trying to distinguish what about these teams is going to make them good or bad. Can I just ask you though, Cincinnati and Baltimore, both 0-2. We just talked about both of them. Who has the better record at the end of the year?
I truly think Cincinnati. I'm just looking at stats and schedule. We all play the same teams because we're in the same division. I just think the way that Baltimore plays, Derrick Henry last game had 18 for 84 and a touchdown. That's a decent game for him. Parlay. Let's remember when he was in Tennessee, he was getting 20 to 28 carries a game, two
Yeah.
touchdowns probably per game, and
Yeah.
around 100, 140 yards rushing a game.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's not getting 100 rushing yards a game, that's not effective.
Yes.
He's 4.7 on a rushing like per carry, which isn't too bad. You got Zay Flowers for 7 for 91 in a tub. Okay, that's decent. Mark Andrews 4 for 51. That was his best game in probably 8 games. But who else is doing something? You don't have enough to be effective. If I look at teams and if I'm playing against the Ravens, I'm stopping. My main thing is stop Derrick Henry, and then I'm going to stop Zay Flowers. I want to force the Ravens to meet me with the 2 tight ends they got and Rashad Bateman.
Yeah. Let's go and move on to the next 0-2 team, the Rams. So this is just a group of good 0-2 teams, but we got the Rams now. A lot of injuries, wide receiver position. Now I think it's just Tyler Johnson and DeMarcus or Allen Robinson. Not DeMarcus.
No, DeMarcus. You're right. DeMarcus Robinson.
DeMarcus Robinson leading, and Kobe Parkinson, Kyren Williams. These are guys, I mean, yeah, so that's their offense, of course, with Matt Stafford. So Rams 0-2, they're a team that usually makes it into the playoffs, and they do have a good coach. We've discussed Sean McVay's run scheme before and how good it is. And Kyren Williams is still a baller. It's just this team has a lot of injuries, and Matt Stafford, he's still got it. Does he kind of get a little bit worse every year. I mean, I don't know. It's up for debate. But let's talk about it. Aaron Donald's gone. 0-2. Is this team going to start being one of the worser teams in the NFL, or at least
No,
this year?
I think they have another good quarterback. I mean, a good quarter. Well, yeah, they do have a good quarterback, but that's my brain freeze right there. Good coach. Sean McVay is the offensive guru. He's one of he's one of these new younger coaches that we said is the pillar of this new generation high tech football and high tech offense. I think he changes his schematics a little bit. He has two great running backs to me, Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, rookie from Michigan. I think what you do is you save and preserve the age of Matthew Stafford. You start running the ball a little bit more, and you get kind of creative with how you run the ball. But then, two, I'm rooting for this guy. This dude is from my hood, man. Tyler Johnson. I'm rooting for this guy because he showed spark in that first game versus Detroit on that Sunday night. And so I think you have dudes who can make plays. Now, are we going to say they're on the level of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua? I don't know. We haven't seen enough. They haven't never been in this position, him or Demarcus Robinson. And then you got Tutu Atwell at the slot receiver. So, and then they got Jordan Willington, rookie from Texas. So you got some dudes that are young that you got to kind of trust by trial and error, by fire. They're thrown into the fire now. So you have no time to try to think about it or go get some free agents. This is who you got. So one thing the coaches I know that are going to do in the Rams, they're going to instill confidence in these guys. They're going to encourage them, make sure that they're, hey, y'all could do this. Puka and Cooper Kupp were, small draft picks from small schools, and so they're going to install that kind of warrior mentality. It just becomes what I've noticed with the Rams and how they play and how they perform and how they do well is off of preparation. All the best players for the Rams, Cooper, AD, Matthew Stafford, over the years, it's been on how they prepare contagiously and like sleeplessly. And so I think Tyler and them have a chance to be good. Their schedule is pretty daunting though, because it's just like you play in the Niners this week, then you at the Bears, then you play the Packers, then you got the Raiders, then you play the Vikings, who are looking pretty good, then you at Seattle, and then you're playing the Dolphins. So it kind of doesn't. Then you at the Patriots versus the Eagles, at the Saints, and then the Bills, then the Niners again, then the Jets. So you got those are your next couple like 10 games, and we know for sure Puka will be out for another 4 weeks, and Cooper Kupp looks like he's going to be out for maybe 6. So it's going to be some warrior mentality here, man. It's going to be some trial and error, and when we look up, if they can get to 4-4, 4-5 even by the time we get around Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving, I think they got a chance if their guys can come back healthy to make it into the wild card. Because I say that because the NFC is going to be very treacherous in the sense of the NFC South is going to carry 2 teams. I think this year the NFC East will carry 2 teams, and then the North, to me, only will carry 1. As much as people think that it'll carry 3, I think it's going to carry 1.
Okay. I agree with everything you said. I do think that Sean McVay is a coach that guys play hard for, and I think that the run scheme that we've talked about many times on this show is confusing enough to defensive coordinators. And then when you have a good run game, and then you have Matt Stafford throwing the ball, you're okay. You're in a position where you can win games. So there will probably be a lot of close games with the Rams, and might upset a lot of teams and backdoor covers for bettors and things like that. So we'll continue.
Oh yeah, from a betting scheme, you gonna get some money with the Rams. I know that.
Yeah. All right. The next 0-2 team, Jacksonville. Good 0-2 teams that we're talking about. Jacksonville, Doug Peterson, Super Bowl champion coach. Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be the what did they say? I think they said franchise QB, once in a generation talent. A lot of big names on that team overall, pretty much. And except for maybe a wide receiver, but they did draft Brian Thomas, who's looking really good. And they have Ingram at tight end. So let's just talk about the Jags real quick. I mean, are these guys frauds? Are they frauds?
I say early on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just, we've been in this Trevor Lawrence project now going on 4 years, I think, and Doug Peterson being under the helm for the last 3 years with Trevor Lawrence. And it's been, we get excited because the Jags are competitive, but they never seem to get it. And they got good defensive talent too.
Yeah.
I don't really know what they look like from an offensive line perspective, but from an overall defense, they got it. They got some guys in the front seven. They got some guys in the back end that are pretty good. And so I think that it just ultimately comes down to how like the tradition of Jacksonville. We've never been like, oh, Jacksonville is a playoff team. They had their run with Leonard Fournette and Jalen Ramsey and Blake Bortles and stuff like that. But, if you go back further than that, it's Fred Taylor back when we were fucking Jits. So it's like, I can't really see it with Jacksonville. I think they're true pretenders. I think that, they'll always be competitive, but their division is tough. Houston's going to win it. We know that. Then you got Indy. I think that they'll start to turn it around. They're young and they're kind of injured right now, but they'll start to turn it around. And then who else you got over there? You got Jacksonville, Indy, Houston, and what's the fourth team in the South? Tennessee. Tennessee's garbage. I mean, yeah, Will Levis, mayonnaise guy. It's bad. We don't even want to talk about them. They're a very bad 0-2 team, and so yeah, it's just ugly, bro. I just don't see it with Jacksonville. I know it's early. These are why parlay. It's hard for us to talk about early fakers and pretenders and contenders. I seen ESPN doing theirs, and it's like, who knows right now? But by the mindset of a team, and it's like Jacksonville is just a competitive team to me that has good talent. But when they got to play them real teams in the playoffs, do they have the experience, let alone the fortitude to overcome a Kansas City Chiefs? Because
Yeah.
that's the benchmark. That's who you're basing it off. And it's like, that's the standard. And so can they win?
You got to build a team that's going to beat the Super Bowl champion. And so that's, I think, what teams, I think teams make that decision. A lot of GM, general managers, and coaches have to just decide: are we going to build our culture, our team, our scheme around beating the teams that win the Super Bowl? And like it's always the Chiefs or the Niners are usually close, or So I think teams have to say: are we built to beat those teams? Do we build our scheme around beating those teams, or do we build our scheme around our guys? And some teams seem to do a little bit of mix of both. But yeah, I think that the Jags, I agree with everything you said. It's still super early, and I'd like to see them make a trade, for a receiver. Give some more help.
I mean, they went and got your boy Gabe Davis, brought him back down to Florida. He's a Central Florida guy himself. Like
Gabe Davis has never to me been that like a real help. Like a real help would be like T. Higgins, or somebody, a wide receiver 2 that can be a wide receiver 1. But at the same time, they have Travis Etienne, they have Ingram, and Trevor Lawrence is, if you're a quarterback, and if you're a once in a generational quarterback, and if you're the real deal, you make other guys better. Even second rounders, third rounders. So maybe this will be a very telling year for Trevor Lawrence as well if they can't do anything with the team they got. So moving on, let's talk about Caleb Williams. The Bears just got beat pretty bad. Watching Caleb play, I didn't see anything phenomenal. I saw a lot of the same. I saw a lot of the same mistakes he made in college, and now on the NFL stage. And those are, they're big mistakes. They're turnovers. In turnovers in pro football, when a game can end 13-20, the games aren't 45-65 anymore. The games are much low scoring. So those turnovers lose games.
Yeah.
So watching Caleb Williams, how the Bears built this team, and also listening to Bill Belichick criticize the Bears and how they built their team. He said on the Manning podcast or Manning cast that they didn't put any money into their O line. They got the receivers to around Caleb and the running back, but they didn't put enough money into the O line. Bill said, and you could tell, you could see it. Teams aren't even blitzing them, and they're getting tons of pressure. And Caleb is running, dropping back, and then he's throwing, and the receivers aren't turning around and catching the ball. So I'm gonna have to side with Belichick there and pretty much all that and just say, hey, I think they made a big mistake. They didn't put enough money into their O line, and
Yeah.
Caleb, I don't want to say. I guess we got to ask ourselves what would because the expectations for Caleb Williams were his ceiling is Patrick Mahomes. Like that's what people were saying.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
now we got to. I mean, I don't. It's way too early
I
to
mean,
call.
I don't mean to cut you off. I got a
Yeah,
bonus question that we're going to talk about with Caleb, being that
yeah,
he was a number one draft pick, and there's a former number one draft pick that's being benched right now. We'll get to that in a quick second. But to talk about him, first of all, his spirit hands aren't going to help him here. So just making a joke at him painting his nail, whatever. Guy does what he want to do. He do what he want to do. I'm not here to judge. It's a free world. You do what you want to do. I know that's kind of some undirected controversy in the locker room. Definitely, I know a lot of guys probably don't sit well with a lot of guys.
yeah. I mean, there is this part of the locker room where you have to relate to your team, and your team has to look at you and say, "Hey, this is a guy I can drink beers with after the game. This is a
Yeah,
guy that I can kick it with. This is a guy that I can trust. I can introduce him to my family."
yeah.
Caleb has a lot of things also besides that. I think a bigger issue is Caleb wanted a part of the franchise when he was drafted. He was
Oh
saying
yeah, oh yeah,
he wanted a percentage of the franchise, and now with NIL and money and the way that the world of football is going, that was a very controversial thing to say, and it's maybe overstepping um, before you get drafted. So
no.
there is something there.
So yeah, to just continue on that, but that plays into it. That the locker room, the whole locker room culture plays into how they're playing. Let's get on the field and let's talk the stats and the numbers. He's not looked great. He's was 23 for 37 in his last game. Only threw for one touchdown. No, he didn't throw for no touchdown, actually. They got their touchdowns on the ground, one, and threw for two interceptions and had 7 sacks. And what's different when I'm looking at him in NFL than college, the game is sped up faster. So all the Superman plays that he likes to make, the window for that doesn't even get to extend in a sense. Like he doesn't get to run out the pocket and run back. Once he runs out the pocket, it's over with. Danielle Hunter is in the backfield, and so for me, I think that I go back to coaching. Offense coordinator needs to do a better job of getting him into a 1-2-3 check down, 1-2-3 check down. Granted, Keenan Allen is hurt right now. That's somebody that kind of gets a lot of the dink and dunk plays. He's been crafted over the slot position. You got DJ Moore, who's a gadget guy. You got Rome Odunze, not really using him as much as I thought they would. And then there's no effective run game. I mean, he rushed for 44 yards on 5 carries, and some of them yards are taken back because of 7 sacks. But then you got DeAndre Swift, 14 carries for 18 yards. You don't win in that. And then it's in Chicago where we get to November, December, the weather becomes very important to the way your offense moves. And so I don't know how the Bears are going to flourish. Their schedule is favorable. They have a good defense. I will say that. They're a lot better than they were in recent years defensively. But I just don't know because to me, he's not Mahomes. I wasn't giving him that tag. I wasn't even crowning him that type of royalty, man. Like Mahomes is a winner for one. He's a competitive edge, and he has mastered what Jason Kelsey has said. Knows how to play structuralized and instinctive. I don't think Caleb is at the structuralized part yet. He's all instinctive. It's all what he sees and what he knows. rather than playing within the NFL system. And so it's gonna be some difficult games for the Bears, man. I don't know how they're gonna get over because let's go not go back. A lot of people didn't think the Vikings were gonna be this good. And I'm not talking about the Vikings offense. The Vikings defense and what Brian Flores is doing, dude.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I don't mean to talk about them or bring them into the conversation, but the Vikings can beat the Bears. They can beat the Lions. They beat
And
the 49ers. They can beat any team in the NFC.
let's start the train. Brian Flores is going to get back to a head coaching job.
Oh, for sure. For
a
sure.
well-deserved head coaching job, and he never deserved to lose a head coaching job in the first place.
No.
So we'll start talking about that on the podcast, and we'll start all aboard in that train. This podcast makes many accurate predictions. We predicted Tank Dell, we predicted Zay Flowers, we've predicted a lot of things. So let's go and start talking about Brian Flores more often and how great they are. You did say you wanted to bring up a quarterback that was benched.
Yeah. It's Bryce Young in Carolina, man. I mean, I think Carolina has quickly given up on their first overall pick last year. I mean, for decent reason. I wouldn't say for good reason, as a lot of us would say, but for decent. He hasn't played well, but hell, the whole team hasn't played well.
Yeah.
O-line still has problem. There's no run game there. He really doesn't have no weapons. He has an old-ass Adam Thielen. He has Terrence Marshall, who was always the number 3 receiver at LSU, if everybody remembers who that is. Then you go get him Xavier Legette, who I didn't think was a very good NFL player. He was a good, measurable prospect in the draft coming out of South Carolina last year. But overall, I didn't think this guy was top 5 receiver to me in the draft. So, he hasn't had help. And like Stephen A has said, like RC has said, Dan Orlowski, I don't think Bryce Young is a bad player. Let's look at Sam Darnold. Let's look at Baker effing Mayfield. It took Baker a couple teams to figure it out. If you recall, we were asking for Baker to leave, like on some Johnny Manziel level, like where it was like Baker will never be that guy. And I think a lot of people eating their words. I ain't gonna say me because I didn't say that. I didn't know because it's Cleveland. But Baker Mayfield has found a home in Tampa, well deserved of the money he's gotten, taking him to the playoffs this year, and what he's doing right now in the first 2 games. For sure, Baker Mayfield is a top 10 quarterback right now in my eyes. And so I think Bryce Young has the ability because he came from Alabama. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, and he has the measurables. Yeah, we're going to talk about how small he is. Look, Kyler Murray is small. Look at what Kyler Murray is doing in Arizona. Shout out to the Cardinals. But, I think that it's just the team. Who is it on? And, who's he playing for? I would take him for my Steelers. He couldn't really mess nothing up. We got an effective run game. Play him in the play action and do like that. So I think what's going to happen for Bryce Young, I think if they bench him, he's still on a rookie contract, which he's probably got 2 years left, but it's all guaranteed. Maybe a trade happens. If they really are giving up on him, like not bringing him back, I think a trade happens. But what looks bad is if you're benching him and you're the new head coach for Carolina, which I don't even know the dude's name, after 2 weeks, my question to you is, how do you bring him back in this season? If you already benched him after 2 weeks, how do you bring him back to be your starting quarterback?
Yeah, and I don't think Andy Dalton by any means is going to light it up or anything. I think it's going to be very similar look. I think they're going to get killed, and I think it starts with the head of the snake, and that's the owner of the Panthers. That's David Tepper. I think he's a terrible owner. He's inflicted a very bad culture, and it goes back last year and the years before that. The culture of the franchise, I think, is terrible, and I think guys don't want to be there. I don't think guys want to play there. I don't think guys want to play for that team. And then when you have that in your head, I think, it's the O-line, it's everybody. And even if you got a few guys who do buy into the system, if Adam Thielen, I'm kind of quoting him, he said it's a team effort and everybody's got to buy in. Well, I don't think everybody's going to buy in at any point. So I think they're going to always have problems. And there's always going to be something in the back of someone's mind of like, I don't even, want to be here. I think the culture is bad. I think the coaching is bad. And like you brought up Xavier Legette. I think guys like that, they have to go to places that have great culture and great teams already to develop an athlete into a great football player. But if you can't even win games, nobody cares about Xavier Leggett. Nobody cares about his development. They care. It's there's so many issues ahead of that. So it's a domino effect, and it's just gonna keep tumbling. And they are a complete dumpster fire of a franchise, and they should sell the franchise. So let's just do let's do the Dre college football Spitfire real quick. Yeah, let's talk about some games coming up and for the fans so they can just hear your take on some big games coming
Yeah,
up.
man.
What you think?
Each week we're going to try to get Parlay more invested into the college football scene. I know Saturday nights he's playing in his live band, playing acoustic guitar in his bluegrass environment in Yonkers, which is weird itself that you guys have bluegrass music, of live music, of bars in Yonkers. Stay out of the strip clubs, by the way. Parlay's kind of going broke with that. Not betting on any teams this year. No FanDuel work for him. More so, his money is in the strip clubs. But on to the college football breakdown. We are in week 4. We're week 4 of college football here, man. We count that 0 week, but this week we have not too many big games. It's a quiet week. We're setting up for next week is a big week when Georgia travels to Alabama. That definitely will be college game day. But this week, USC is going to Michigan. Michigan ranked 18th, 2-1, coming back off that tough loss versus Texas last week. USC looking decent, Parlay. I mean, there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors right now, but this will be their first big test in the new Big Ten look. So I'm excited to see that. That's a 2:30 kickoff. UCLA traveling to LSU. LSU coming off the game of the week last week, playing in South Carolina and sneaking by 3 last week. And so we'll see what Brian Kelly, got to say for LSU. There might be some questions later if Brian Kelly will be maybe one of the new head coaches next year in the NFL going from college. But other than that, I would say we have Tennessee and Oklahoma. That's the game of the week in Norman this week. Tennessee looking pretty good, Parlay. I will let you know a guy that you need to look for in a couple years. Nico, I can't pronounce his last name, at quarterback for Tennessee. Hey, dude throws it. I'm talking about dude throws it. The old school version of like a Randall Cunningham size, but he's definitely throwing a rock there. And so I'll definitely be checking that. Of course, I will be watching Colorado play Baylor this week. And then 7 p.m., UL Monroe going against number 1 Texas. Arch Manning's first start. Exciting to see. Any words about Arch?
Oh man, I mean they got a great quarterback room in Texas. Texas, seriously, people are going to be talking about them winning the whole thing. I mean, they got a great team, great quarterbacks, whether it's Quinn or Manning, and we'll see. I mean, both of those guys. So Archie will be there for another year. Quinn, real quick, I want to ask you, where do you think Quinn will get drafted in the NFL?
I think he has the potential to go to first round. He's on a premier team in the best conference in the whole nation. But I think it's the fact of size plus real arm talent. I would say real arm talent would be the question for me, and not arm talent in the sense of can he throw the ball like Josh Allen and be a cannon. I think it's a consistent thing. I don't. We're seeing more of it this year, but his problem was turnovers in prior years. And so I think we need to see more on tape. But he's hurt, so who knows? But I think Arch Manning has something to say. I think Arch Manning, first of all, is the fastest Manning in the Manning history. I don't know if you've seen his 65-yard run last week, but it looks pretty athletic. So I'm excited to see him play. He has been lighting it up. He had 264 yards and 4 touchdowns last week and a rushing touchdown. So I'm excited to see. But other than that, man, that's the rundown from your boy Life of D Green. Next week we'll have more because it'll be a big game. Alabama versus Georgia. Oh, and one more thing. Anybody, don't ask me anything else about Florida State. I've given up on my team for the year. I'm still a Noles fan through and through, Garnett and Gold, but I'm not watching them anymore. I don't take any questions this year. They're 0-3, a piece of shit. Talk about a dumpster fire. No, none of that this year.
Well, that's our show. Week 2, NFL, bro bets. You know what it is. I'm Parlay Hunter.
Man, Life of the Green, man. Check us out. We are back every week with this. We're going to have more content. I promise. Hey, Parlay's been leading this thing. I've been doing my thing. but I want to always salute my dog because it takes motivation. It takes a true partnership to even have a business like this because you guys don't understand the operations that go into this. So, hey, much love. Y'all go check out Parlay, bringing music at you every day, man.
Salute to you, my brother, as well. You know, it's all love over here, man. We're just trying to, produce some good content, give people a good take on, football and whatnot. Two people who watch it, who've been watching it for a long time. We know the ins and outs. We know the players. We know the teams. We know the coaches. So we're just trying to let the fans know what we think. Try to help them with their perspective as well as we watch this beautiful game. And like you said in this podcast, modern day gladiators. And that is the truth. Modern day gladiators. This game might not be around 100 years from now. So right now we're going to talk about it. We're going to celebrate it. We're going to love it and podcast about it. So appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate you, Dre. Everybody.
We out of here.